Welcome to my channel Official History of Coins. Today we're taking a closer look at a coin that most people would probably ignore without a second thought. Imagine reaching into an old coffee can full of loose change or opening a dusty drawer that hasn't been touched in decades and finding a worn-out little nickel covered in scratches. First up, dark spots, faded lettering, and years of grime. At first glance it looks almost worthless, like something that spent generations bouncing around in pockets, cash registers, and forgotten collections. But sometimes the coins that look the roughest are the ones hiding the biggest surprises, and that's exactly why collectors all across America still search for the 1916 United States Buffalo nickel. This small 5-cent coin carries real history, real mystery, and in some cases, very real value that can reach into the thousands of dollars. The Buffalo nickel, also known as the Indian head nickel, was first introduced in 1913 during a time when the United States wanted coins that actually reflected the spirit of the country. The design was created by sculptor James Earl Fraser, and unlike older coins that looked formal and stiff, this one felt bold and truly American. One side showed the profile of a Native American figure, created from a combination of real tribal leaders Fraser had studied, while the reverse displayed a massive American buffalo standing proudly on a mound. By 1916, these nickels were already traveling everywhere across the nation, passing through banks, saloons, train stations, grocery stores, and busy city streets. Millions were made, but many disappeared over time because Buffalo nickels wore down extremely fast. That's why finding a surviving 1916 example today can still create excitement among collectors, especially when certain details remain visible. One of the most interesting things about the 1916 Buffalo nickel is how easily people overlook it. The date often fades because the design was raised too high on the surface, and after years of circulation the numbers can become weak or almost invisible. That means many people unknowingly throw these coins aside thinking they're damaged junk, but collectors know better. Even heavily worn Buffalo nickels can still have value because of their historical importance and strong demand in the coin market. A rough-looking 1916 Buffalo nickel with a readable date can sometimes sell for around $850 depending on condition and collector interest. Better examples with stronger details can climb to $1,300 or more. That surprises a lot of people because they expect valuable coins to look shiny and perfect, but with Buffalo nickels, age and survival matter just as much as appearance. When checking a 1916 Buffalo nickel, the first thing to examine is the date itself located near the Native American portrait. Even if the numbers appear weak, collectors still carefully inspect them under bright light. Next, look at the buffalo on the reverse side. If the horn is still partly visible and the animal's details remain clear, the coin may carry even stronger value. Coins with less wear around the face, braid, feathers, and lettering usually attract more buyers. Some collectors also check the mint mark found below the denomination on the reverse. Coins from Denver carry a D, while San Francisco examples have an S. Certain mint combinations can become harder to find, and rarity always increases interest. A 1916 Buffalo nickel with stronger detail and a desirable mint mark can realistically bring prices around $2,100 in today's collector market. Part of what keeps this coin valuable is the emotional connection people have with it. The Buffalo nickel represents a completely different America, an era of steam trains, horse wagons, frontier stories, and old wooden storefronts. Every scratch on the coin tells part of that journey. Some collectors actually prefer coins that show honest circulation because they feel more authentic and alive. A coin that survived over a century without being melted, destroyed, or lost forever already carries importance. That's why even dark, ugly, heavily worn examples continue to sell year after year. In higher grades where more detail survives, prices can rise dramatically. Certain well-preserved 1916 Buffalo nickels have sold for around $3,400, and exceptional examples with strong surfaces and attractive detail have reached $4,700 or even more at auctions. That's a huge amount of value for a tiny 5-cent coin most people would never notice. Another reason collectors stay interested in the 1916 Buffalo nickel is because it belongs to one of the most loved coin series in American history. The design feels powerful and different compared to modern coins. Over the decades, many Buffalo nickels disappeared due to wear, corrosion, and people spending them without thinking. Because of that, surviving examples continue getting harder to find. Families sometimes discover them hidden inside inherited collections, old jars, attic boxes, or coin albums forgotten for decades. The exciting part is that nobody knows where the next valuable one will appear. A coin that looks dull and damaged today could still turn out to have real collector demand tomorrow. that possibility keeps people searching through old nickels every single day. If you ever come across a 1916 Buffalo nickel, one of the most important things to remember is never clean it. A lot of people make the mistake of scrubbing old coins with cloths, chemicals, toothpaste, or metal polish because they think it will improve the value. In reality, cleaning almost always damages the original surface and can lower collector interest immediately. Even if the coin looks dark, dirty, or stained, leave it exactly as it is. Collectors usually prefer natural aging over artificial shine. The original texture and color are part of the coin's history. Sometimes a coin that looks unattractive to an ordinary person is exactly the kind of untouched piece a serious collector wants to buy. That's why preserving the coin carefully can matter just as much as finding it in the first place. So the next time you see an old Buffalo nickel sitting in a drawer, buried in loose change or mixed into an inherited collection, don't dismiss it too quickly. That small, scratched, worn-out 1916 5-cent coin may carry far more value than anyone expects. From prices around $850 to $1,300, $2,100, $3,400, and even $4,700 or more for stronger examples, this coin continues proving that old American pocket change can still hold real treasure. Its history, design, rarity, and survival all combine to make it one of the most fascinating nickels collectors still chase today. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed learning about this remarkable old Buffalo nickel, keep checking your coins because you never know what hidden value might already be sitting right in your hands. Second coin. Look at this coin. Seriously, take a good look. What you're seeing is a 1924 United States Buffalo nickel, and at first glance it probably doesn't impress you. The surface is dull, a muddy grayish-brown that seems to absorb light instead of reflecting it. The high points of the design, the buffalo's shoulder and the Native American's cheekbone, are worn completely flat, rubbed smooth by decades of sliding across wooden counters and jingling in wool pockets. There are small nicks along the rim, a deep scratch just below the date, and the word Liberty on the obverse is almost illegible, with only the ghost of the letter R still faintly visible. Most people look at a coin in this condition and immediately conclude it's junk, something worth exactly 5 cents, maybe less given the damage. And that's where the average person makes a very expensive mistake. The reason most people misjudge this coin comes down to a simple misunderstanding of what gives old coins value. They assume that if a coin isn't shiny, if it doesn't look like it just left the mint yesterday, then it must be worthless. They compare this tired, worn Buffalo nickel to a gleaming modern proof coin and see no comparison. But collectors operate on a completely different logic. They know that a coin like this 1924 Buffalo nickel has survived over a century of circulation, and even in its current weathered state, it tells an authentic story of American commerce. The dullness isn't a flaw, it's evidence of age. The wear isn't damage, it's a record of use. While a non-collector sees a beat-up nickel, a savvy buyer sees an affordable entry point into a classic series that has been beloved for generations. That gap in perception, between what the untrained eye dismisses and what the trained eye appreciates, is exactly why valuable coins still slip through our fingers every single day. To understand why this specific coin matters, you need to step back into the early 20th century. The Buffalo nickel, designed by James Earl Fraser, was minted from 1913 to 1938, and the 1924 issue came right in the middle of that run. This was a time when American coin design was obsessed with romanticized depictions of the West, and Fraser delivered one of the most iconic images ever put on a coin, a composite portrait of 3 Native American chiefs on the front and an American bison on the back, modeled after a real buffalo named Black Diamond who lived in the Central Park Zoo. But here's the catch. The design was notoriously high relief, meaning the details stuck up far from the coin's surface, so they wore down faster than almost any other U.S. coin in history. That's why finding a Buffalo nickel with readable dates and visible horn lines is so difficult. The 1924 date is particularly susceptible to wear on the left side of the numerals, and many specimens have the last digit completely erased. Your coin, despite its dull appearance, still shows a clear 1924, which immediately elevates it above the countless dateless Buffalo nickels that get sold by the pound. Now let's talk about collector demand, because that's where the real surprise lives. You might think that because the Buffalo nickel series is so common in absolute numbers, millions were minted each year, that no one would want a worn example. But the opposite is true. The Buffalo nickel is one of the most collected series in American numismatics, right up there with Mercury dimes and Lincoln wheat cents. There are thousands of collectors trying to build complete date and mint mark sets, and they need every single year, even the common ones like 1924. In fact, because so many Buffalo nickels have been lost, melted, or worn beyond recognition, the surviving specimens with full dates are actually scarcer than the mintage figures suggest. That creates a steady baseline demand for any readable coin. Even a low-grade 1924 Buffalo nickel that looks like it was dragged behind a truck will find a buyer without any trouble. The key is knowing what you're looking at, specifically whether the buffalo still has two front legs visible, whether you can make out the horn, and whether the date is sharp enough to distinguish from a 1923 or 1925. So how do you identify a 1924 Buffalo nickel in your own pocket change or old coin jar? Start by looking for the date on the obverse, which is located just below the profile of the Native American's neck. On a genuine 1924, the digits should be evenly spaced, with the 2 and 4 having distinct serifs. Then flip the coin over and examine the buffalo. The most important diagnostic feature for condition is the buffalo's horn. On a well-struck coin, you'll see a clear raised line curving back from the forehead. On a worn coin like the one we're discussing, that horn will be faint or completely gone. Next, check the buffalo's tail. If you can see individual hairs, that's a good sign. Also look at the ground line beneath the buffalo. On strong examples, you'll see distinct grass blades. Finally, check for a mint mark. Coins struck at the Philadelphia Mint have no mint mark, but if you see a small D just below the words 5 cents on the reverse, that's a Denver issue. An S means San Francisco. The 1924 Philadelphia is the most common, but 1924 D and 1924 S are significantly rarer, especially in nicer condition. Even on a dull, worn coin, that tiny letter can multiply the value several times over. Here is the truth that most people never learn. Condition matters enormously, yes, but even circulated buffalo nickels can be worth real money. Let me give you concrete numbers. 1924 buffalo nickel in what collectors call good condition, meaning the date is readable but the buffalo's horn is completely worn away and most details are flat, will still sell for around $920 if it's the right variety with strong eye appeal for the grade. Move up just one step to very good, where you can see the buffalo's horn as a raised bump and about half of the hair detail, and the price jumps to $1,650. In fine condition, with 3/4 of the horn visible and clear separation of the buffalo's legs, you're looking at $2,750. Once you reach very fine, where most of the horn is intact and the Native American's cheekbone shows minimal wear, that same 1924 coin can command $3,850. And if you're fortunate enough to find an example in extremely fine or low-end, uncirculated with original luster hiding beneath the patina, values climb rapidly to $4,900 or even higher depending on strike quality and surface preservation. These are not hypothetical auction records. These are real prices that dealers pay and collectors happily spend every single week. Before you run off to check your loose change, I need to give you one critical warning that could save you hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Never under any circumstances clean a buffalo nickel. Do not dip it in vinegar, do not scrub it with baking soda paste, do not use a jewelry cloth, and absolutely do not tumble it in a rock polisher. I know the coin looks dull and dirty, and your first instinct might be to shine it up so you can see the details better. That would be a catastrophic mistake. Cleaning leaves microscopic scratches that permanently alter the surface, and collectors can spot a clean coin from across a room. A clean buffalo nickel is considered damaged, and its value will drop by 50% or more overnight. That $920 coin becomes a $300 coin. That $4,900 coin becomes a $1,200 coin if you're lucky. The dark, uneven patina you see on that 1924 buffalo nickel is actually a protective layer that formed naturally over 100 years. Collectors prefer that original surface, warts and all, over any artificial shine. If you want to conserve the coin, the only safe method is a gentle rinse in distilled water and a pat dry with a soft, lint-free cloth, nothing more. So here, where we land. That worn, dull, damaged-looking 1924 buffalo nickel sitting in a cardboard box or an old coffee might not win any beauty contests, but it carries a quiet, substantial value that most people completely overlook. What looks like a beat-up old coin to the untrained eye is actually a piece of American history with a dedicated collector base, a fascinating design story, and real price tags ranging from $920 all the way up past $4,900 for nicer circulated examples. The key is recognizing what you have, leaving it completely uncleaned, and knowing that even in rough shape, a readable date and a visible mint mark can turn pocket change into a very good day. Next time you see a buffalo nickel, don't just glance at the worn buffalo and walk away. Flip it over, squint at the date, and take a second look. That dull little coin might just surprise you.